It's January 26 here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Starting with a South Korean lawmaker being attacked in central Seoul. People Power Party lawmaker Bae Hyun-jin sustained a head injury after being attacked by an assailant who reportedly is a minor. Thursday's attack was the second this month on a politician ahead of general elections in April. The U.S. economy expanded at a strong 3.3% pace in the fourth quarter of 2023 as cooling inflation encouraged consumer spending. The European Central Bank held interest rates steady again, continuing its inflation fight. Team Korea stumbled into the knockout phase of the Asian Football Confederation Asian Cup after drawing 3-3 with Malaysia in Qatar. The Taeguk Warriors will now face Saudi Arabia in the round of 16 next Tuesday local time. South Korea's ruling party lawmaker Bae Hyun-jin was attacked with a rock on Thursday. The second attack on a political figure in less than a month. Calls for action and a deeper look into the safety of political figures are mounting ahead of the April general elections. Shin Se-byuk reports.
People Power Party lawmaker Bae Hyun-jin was struck on the head with a rock by an assailant on Thursday evening in Seoul. According to Bae's office, the 41-year-old was immediately taken to a hospital and remains in a stable condition. Bae, a former television news anchor, briefly served as then-President-elect Yoon Suk-yeol's spokesperson in 2022. The suspect, who said he is 15 years old, was arrested by police at the site. The motive behind the attack is not yet known. Early on Friday, the assailant was placed in emergency hospital care, accompanied by a guardian. This is an action that can be taken by individuals believed to have mental health issues and pose a risk to themselves or others. After the incident, the presidential office released a statement calling for a thorough investigation and wishing Bae a speedy recovery. Political opponents were also united in criticizing the attack and called for proper response measures.
Crime and terrorism aren't issues of political sides or party lines. This is absolutely intolerable. All of us must work together on preventative measures.
The Democratic Party of Korea firmly condemns political terrorism and calls for a swift, thorough investigation by the authorities.
The DP leader Lee Jae-myung also posted on Facebook saying no act of, quote, political terrorism should be tolerated, and also wished Bae a speedy recovery. The news has sent shockwaves through the political community as the attack comes some 3 weeks after the opposition DP leader was stabbed in the neck during a visit to Busan. Prime Minister Han Duck-soo on Thursday ordered thorough investigations into the case and called on authorities to focus on ensuring the safety of key figures, including lawmakers, to prevent similar crimes ahead of the upcoming April general elections. The police formed a dedicated protection team for key political figures, including party leaders, following the assault on the DP leader earlier this month. This is a departure from the usual protocol, where personal security teams are typically deployed for such individuals only during the official campaign period starting 14 days before an election. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
The commute to Seoul City is notorious, especially during rush hours. To help commuters save time and energy, high-speed intercity train lines will be extended and available starting this March. Kim Do-yeon has details.
From 70 minutes to just 20. That's how much time the Great Train Express, or GTX, will cut for those commuting from Dongtan in Gyeonggi-do Province to Suseok in Gangnam of Seoul, starting this March as the first GTX line, Line A, opens. That's according to President Yoon Suk-yeol on Thursday, as improving commuting times and transportation was the theme of the 6th New Year's policy discussion.
저는 그래서 선거 때부터 출퇴근 30분 시대를 약속드렸습니다. 출퇴근의 질이 바로 우리 삶의 질이기 때문입니다. 교통 격차 해소를 통해서 국민의 이 삶의 질을 확실하게 개선해 드리겠습니다. 당장 올해부터 본격적인 GTX 시대를 열겠습니다.
The GTX project officially started back in 2011. Many who work in Seoul opt for cheaper housing in Gyeonggi-do province with a longer commute. The GTX was aimed to relieve this. Reducing commuting time also means that it could ease Seoul's intense real estate market as more people consider living further out from the capital. GTX lines confirmed so far are A, B, and C. A goes from Gyeonggi-do north of Seoul, cutting through before ending at the southern part of the province at Pyeongtaek Station. B cuts across horizontally and is set to start operating in 2030, while C also runs vertically, set to operate 2028. All have a maximum speed of 180 kilometers per hour, 3 times faster than the current Seoul metro system. More are being planned as well. Lines D, E, and F will be pushed by the current administration. Line E is set to connect to the nation's main international airport. On top of this, the government is looking to create similar express train systems in the nation's 4 biggest cities, including Busan. Also, according to the government, more projects are in the pipeline. They include underground highway systems and improving the public transit of other local districts. Altogether, it will be worth more than $100 billion, including private funding. Meanwhile, Thursday's discussion was held in the city of Uijeongbu of Gyeonggi-do province, where the groundbreaking ceremony for Line C followed. President Yoon was there to amplify his message.
처음부터 끝까지 꼼꼼하게 직접 챙기겠습니다. 늦지 않고 제때 제대로 개통되게 하겠습니다. 국민과의 약속은 반드시 지킬 것입니다.
President Yoon also spoke to those involved in the construction of the projects, asking them for a speedy but safe completion. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
The U.S. economy held up much better than expected in the fourth quarter of last year, with cooling inflation fueling consumer spending. The European Central Bank froze its interest rates once again with a note that it was too early for rate cuts just yet. Lee Seung-jae has more.
According to the U.S. Commerce Department on Thursday, the U.S. economy grew at a faster pace than expected, growing at a 3.3% annualized rate in the fourth quarter of last year. The figure beat the Wall Street consensus estimate of a 2% gain. The U.S. economy for all of 2023 grew at a 2.5% annualized pace, also well ahead of the Wall Street outlook and better than the 1.9% increase in 2022. The U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis said that the increase in real GDP reflected increases in consumer spending, exports, state and local government spending, non-residential fixed investment, federal government spending, private inventory investment, and residential fixed investment. The latest data from the Commerce Department also showed that U.S. consumer prices have been easing. Consumer prices in the fourth quarter of last year rose at a 1.7% annual rate, down from 2.6% in the third quarter. Core inflation came in at a 2% annual rate. Meanwhile, the European Central Bank decided on Thursday to freeze all 3 key interest rates for the third straight time after its last hike in September, keeping the benchmark deposit facility rate at 4%. The interest rate on the main refinancing operations and the interest rates on the marginal lending facility were also kept at a 4.50% and 4.75% respectively. ECB President Christine Lagarde said the ECB board believed any talk of cutting rates was premature, given the uncertain economic outlook and risk of wage growth pushing inflation higher in the first quarter. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
We're less than 2 months away from Russia's presidential election, where Vladimir Putin will attempt to further tighten his grip on leadership by seeking a 5th term as leader. Why does Russia's 2024 election matter? Let's turn to Professor Joel Atkinson. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, good morning. It's nice to be here.
Thanks for joining us. Russian President Vladimir Putin's decision to run for the upcoming election in March was no surprise. Do you think Putin securing yet another term will also be a predictable one?
Yes, Putin announced in December that he would seek a 5th presidential term in the upcoming March elections. In reality, the extent to which Putin has come to dominate the political system and the media in Russia over the past 2 decades means that, this very terminology, the very words elections, running and winning, don't really mean what they normally do. So yes, the result is a predictable one. Putin is going to win. But winning is not the only reason for the election. They are a way for Putin to legitimize his decision to invade Ukraine. He can show the people and the soldiers and their families want him to serve another term. He can show through the votes that the country is behind him. It also sends a message of calm and normalcy to the Russian people, a sign of life that life goes on as normal. And importantly, he can show the elites that he relies on to remain in power that he is very much still in control. And it also serves that function of forcing governors and others to show that the Kremlin that they're in total control of their regions. So any disruption around the elections will be taken as a sign of their unfitness to stay in office. It also reminds those governors that they're dependent on Putin for their positions. So the elections are an important ritual in the Russian political system.
Definitely. Putin running for another term is in line with him signing back in 2021 that would allow him to continue in office until 2036, right?
Yeah, that's right. So for him, the main challenge is not winning. The main challenge for him is to get a high turnout rate, to have many people to actually make the effort to get out and vote. So for leaders like Putin, without any realistic competition from other candidates, the main challenger is actually himself from previous elections. So Putin needs to match or beat his own results to maintain that winning image. So in the 2018 elections, Putin got 76.7% of the vote with a 67.5% turnout. And so now both of those records have to be beaten. And because Putin has been so successful in eliminating any threats to his rule, because his winning is so inevitable, this makes it a challenge to convince people to bother voting. So his regime will make efforts to boost turnout. They'll hand out prizes, ask employers to ensure staff vote, give voters 3 days off to cast their ballots, 3 days time span to cast their ballots. They'll bus people to the polls and so on. And of course, the other issue is his age. He's now 71 years old and he won't be able to stay in power forever.
Right. Professor Atkinson, still we have to go over his contenders, although it is fair to say they're not going to be much of a threat to Putin.
Yeah, so that's his problem, is his contenders are too little a threat. Two well-known senior politicians have declined to run, and that will delegitimize the election somewhat and make it harder to get that high turnout. There are currently something like 3 nominees and presumably more to come, but none of those approved nominees are running on an anti-Ukraine war platform and are not very exciting to voters. The one interesting contender is Jaap van Zweden. He's opposed to the war in Ukraine, and he's in the process of getting the required numbers of signatures, which at least in theory would enable him to register. Whether or not he will be able to do that remains to be seen. There was another former regional legislator and a journalist who also was running on an anti-war platform who was rejected last December. So, but the number of people willing to put their signature under his name kind of indicates some of that unhappiness with the Ukraine war.
Right. Professor Atkinson, you mentioned if Putin does win, his aggression on Ukraine will be worsened. But what about the situation here on the Korean Peninsula? Will he further deepen Moscow's ties with Pyongyang?
Yeah, so the relationship between North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and Putin is clearly trending towards increased cooperation. Some even predict we're headed for even a formal military alliance between the two. That's probably not realistic, but it's true that Russia is using North Korean armaments, including ballistic missiles, to assist with its war effort. North Korea is very interested in Russia's expertise in military and aerospace technology. And Kim visited Russia last year, and North Korea is currently talking out the prospects of Putin reciprocating that visit. And this would be important. The only visit any Russian president has made to North Korea was when Putin visited all the way back in 2002. In contrast, North Korean leaders have made official trips to Russia 14 times, and Russian leaders have visited South Korea about 6 times or so.
Right. All right, Professor Atkinson, thank you so much for your insight this morning. You have a great day.
Thank you.
The South Korean national football team stumbled into the knockout phase of the Asian Football Confederation Asian Cup after drawing 3-3 with Malaysia on Thursday in Qatar. South Korean midfielder Chung Woo-young's 21st-minute header gave the Taeguk Warriors 1-0 lead at the Al Janoub Stadium. However, Malaysia replied with 2 second-half goals. PSG's Ghanian scored his third goal of the tournament in the 83rd minute to level the match. Captain Son Heung-min converted a penalty 4 minutes into added time for the 3-2 lead, but Malaysia snatched a last-gasp equalizer in the dying seconds. Now, the draw means the Taeguk Warriors finished second in Group E and face Saudi Arabia in the round of 16. That match kicks off next Tuesday at 7 p.m. local time at the Education City Stadium. South Korea at the UN condemned North Korea's ballistic missile exports as a blatant violation of UN Security Council resolutions and vowed to fully monitor the situation. During a UN disarmament conference meeting in Geneva on Friday local time, South Korea's envoy Yoon said that the illegal transfer of weapons undermines the security of the Korean peninsula and beyond. She also emphasized the need to closely monitor what is exchange in such transactions. Earlier this month, the White House revealed that Russia had received dozens of ballistic missiles from the north, some of which have already been used in attacks in Ukraine. The Seoul Philharmonic, one of the oldest orchestras in Korea, recently appointed its new music director, Jaap van Zweden. He's holding an inaugural concert with the orchestra for 2 days, featuring pianist Im Yoon-chan. Our cultural correspondent Song Yoo-jin has his story.
Less than a month into his role as the music director of the Seoul Philharmonic Orchestra, Jaap van Zweden says he's already feeling at home. His connection with Korea goes back decades.
My big violin teacher was a Korean man, Hyo Kang, who is still a very respected teacher at the Juilliard School. And I have very close contact still with him. But on stage, I've been working for many years with Korean artists.
Before coming to Korea, the Dutch conductor led the New York and Hong Kong Philharmonic orchestras. Under his baton, the Hong Kong Philharmonic became the first Asian orchestra to be named Gramophone's Orchestra of the Year. Celebrating his new chapter in Korea, Seoul Philharmonic is holding a concert featuring pianist Im Yoon-chan, the winner of the 2022 Van Cliburn International Piano Competition. It's been only a few days since they started rehearsing together, but they've already found a rhythm.
I can smell, I can feel, I can see also that the history of this man is hard-working, serious musician. And that is always very touching and moving.
The 2-day concert will provide a glimpse into the maestro's vision for the Seoul Philharmonic. Performing Mahler's Symphony No. 1 aligns with his goal of performing and recording all of Mahler's symphonies within his 5-year term.
And I think it will make the orchestra, it will put the orchestra in an extra layer of color, emotions, strength in the future.
For him, a top-tier orchestra consistently delivers excellence, and his aim is clear: to shape the Seoul Philharmonic into just that.
I think that maybe the road to heaven is maybe more beautiful than heaven itself. So being on the road with the orchestra is the big joy for me. And I hope also for the players in the orchestra.
And he hopes the audience feels the same.
We truly enjoy every concert that we play on stage. And so the enjoyment and the intensity, that is what we want to give the public.
Starting with this week's concert, Van Zweden will be opening up a new era with the Seoul Philharmonic Orchestra. 송유진, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Kim Seong, and now we turn off the stories from around the world. We begin today in Russia, where a court in St. Petersburg sentenced a woman to 27 years in jail on Thursday for the killing of a pro-war blogger last April. 26-year-old Daria Trepova was charged with the terrorist act carried out by an organized group causing intentional death and the illegal possession of explosive devices by an organized group, as well as forging documents. The victim, 40-year-old pro-war blogger Vladimir Tatarsky, was killed by a statuette bomb in a cafe handed to him by Trepova on April 2nd last year. 52 others were injured in the explosion. Russian investigators accuse Ukraine of being behind the attack. Trepova claimed that she was following orders from a Ukrainian man known as Gestalt, saying that she wanted to work in Ukraine as a journalist in opposition to the Russo-Ukrainian war. Trepova's lawyer commented that the 27-year jail term is one of the most severe sentences against a woman in Russia's modern justice history. In Austria, a court ruling on Thursday may allow the infamous sex offender Josef Fritzl to be moved from a psychiatric detention to a regular prison. The 88-year-old Austrian Fritzl held his own daughter captive in a cellar for 24 years, raping her thousands of times, and fathered 7 children with her before being arrested in April 2008. Thursday's decision by the Austrian court stipulates that Fritzl attends regular psychotherapy and undergoes psychiatric evaluations during a 10-year probation period at the regular prison. Fritzl is currently being held in a high-security institution for mentally disturbed offenders in Stein prison. Under Austrian law, prisoners can apply for conditional release after serving 15 years, meaning Fritzl may be released under parole this year. Josef Fritzl, named the Monster of Amstetten, was sentenced to life in prison after he locked up his then 18-year-old daughter in a soundproof basement of his house in 1984 and kept her captive for 24 years. Out of the 7 children who his daughter gave birth to from rape, 1 died. The United Kingdom is set to return a selection of Ghanaian royal regalia 150 years after they were looted from Ghana. Some 32 artifacts stolen from the Asante king in the 19th century will be handed over on a long-term loan to the Mania Palace Museum in Kumasi, with 17 pieces from the Victoria and Albert Museum and 15 from the British Museum confirmed. Director of the V&A, Tristram Hunt, said a gold peace pipe and gold discs worn by royal officials are the equivalent of Britain's crown jewels. While controversy remains over the ownership of the looted artifacts, some museums claim that they are banned by law from permanently returning items in their collection to their origin countries. In Myanmar, a military junta government court put the house of former Myanmar leader Aung San Suu Kyi up for auction on Thursday. The house is where Aung San Suu Kyi spent 15 years under house arrest. Suu Kyi, who has been in prison since the military overthrew her government in 2021, has been involved in a legal dispute with her brother over the ownership of the lakeside villa. The villa is expected to go under the hammer on March 20th, with a starting bid of around $90 million.
Good morning. It's another freezing morning to start the day with cold alerts in place across Korea, but we will be slowly warming up as the day goes on, and a much awaited above freezing daytime high is in the forecast this afternoon in the capital after 5 days. Meanwhile, athletes in Gangwon-do should also notice a slight rise in the highs today, although Pyeongchang and Hwaseong will stay below freezing all day today. Highs will be 2 to 5 degrees higher this afternoon. Seoul at 3 degrees, Busan topping out at 9 degrees Celsius this afternoon, with a dry advisory in place in the port city. In fact, Gyeongsang-do and nearby areas are under a dry advisory today. Sunny skies are in store nationwide, but Jeju Island will be rather cloudy. We'll have temperatures near the norms over the weekend under bright skies in most parts of Korea. Looking ahead, next week looks more promising with temperatures hovering slightly above seasonal averages. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back next week for a Monday's edition at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.